Come back.
Today is Wednesday, October 19th, 2011. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Steve Stanley.
I'm Heath Mulliken.
I'm Steven Sheep.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Technology Show. This is a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between.
I think we have that certified.
The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 128.
And it's also the start of my new show streak where I,
Please don't change it on this show. Cut the camera!
consecutive shows.
We
starting
need no
today.
show streak, man. Listen, last night, Steve and I were at a reception for the president of...
West Africa Theological Seminary.
Yeah, and
Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay, and one of the people there was explaining how internet is a challenge and what they have to pay. So now get this, and I think everyone here understands how this works. For 128
KB.
kilobytes.
That's about essentially twice the old dial-up, the maximum dial-up, 54K.
Yeah. 128, they pay $860 a month.
What?
For 128. So I have an 18 meg service here at the house.
Yeah.
So I did all the math. I got the calculator out. If I had to pay that rate,
Yeah.
it would cost me $125,000 a month.
Hey, give the government time.
What in the world?
Crazy,
Isn't that
man.
How do they afford that?
He said, now he did say this, they're up to 512K now. So
Oh,
yeah.
Well.
Costs them a little bit more. So I don't, yeah.
Well, that's about what we've got at Table Rock at our Kansas District campground. My word.
Yeah. So we have Heath back in studio. Steve's back. Heath had the plague last week.
Dude, it was bad. I took my kids to school, got home at 7:30, and woke up at 3.
Wow.
So how'd you get rid of it? You find the village sin eater or something and pay them?
We did. We shut the doors and we.
You offended Steven on that.
yeah,
You see,
yeah.
we lost Steven.
Come
It's
back,
all right.
baby.
Keep talking. He'll come back in. Just
Well,
keep
that's
it
because
sanitary.
they cast Steven out of me last week. That's what happened. But no, it was. I'm feeling much better.
All right. Steven has joined us for the second time this morning.
Yeah, I'm getting some horrible audio
No, that's us.
through Skype right now. I don't know what's going on, fellas. That's why I signed out and tried to sign back in.
All righty. Well, just keep working with it there. Steve, you were taking an exam a week ago at
was.
this time.
I was having my head examined, as you all have recommended to me so frequently, and they found that that's not the problem, not
Okay.
the problem at all. At least,
No brain, huh? Well, see.
at least that's what they said as they scurried out of the room.
All right. Well, this week we're going to have a very tech-heavy show, but not about gadgets and things of that nature. About technology in general, how we respond to it, and especially technology in the church. I shot Steven an email, I think Monday night, and asked him if he would join us because I know that this is a subject that he's concerned about and likes to see technology in the church brought together. And so I thought a great way to start is that whenever change happens, whenever technology moves, it's always threatening. I mean, there are always fears because they're just things that are not known. And so what we'll do here is we're going to begin with just 3 quotes from different eras throughout history. And so the first quote Steve's going to have, this is from a New York Times article, March 22nd, 1876. It was an article and simply entitled The Telephone. I'll be reading an article from 1877, November, where they are talking about the phonograph and the future implications of that. And then Heath is going to read what Nick Bilton, and I'll talk about Nick here in a little while, but what Nick Bilton has talked about in terms of the railway in Great Britain and how people reacted to that. So, Steve, why don't you start with yours?
The article's The Telephone, as Tony said, from the New York Times, March 22nd, 1876. It says, The universal use of the telephone will of course be viewed with disapprobation by the sound-producing part of the community, just as the introduction of labor-saving machines was met with the hostility of the laboring classes. No man who can sit in his own study with his telephone by his side and thus listen to the performance of an opera at the Academy will care to go to 14th Street and to spend the evening in a hot, anti-crowded building. In like manner, many persons will prefer to hear lectures and sermons in the comfort and privacy of their own rooms, rather than to go to the church or the lecture room. The rural visitor who spends a Sunday in town and reads a printed notice in the office of his hotel to the effect that Talmage's sermons drawn from the Word can be heard at 11 o'clock in the telephonic room will, of course, give up his original intention of risking a journey to Brooklyn and will listen to the trembling telephone as its sympathetic brass vibrates to the tones of the resonant Brooklyn orator. Thus the telephone, by bringing music and ministers into every home, will empty the concert halls and the churches, and the time may come when a future Von Bülow, playing a solitary piano in his own private room, and a future Talmage preaching in his private gymnasium, may be heard in every well-furnished house on the American continent.
It's amazing just to see how he doesn't even how he's wrong about how the telephone would be used.
Yeah.
You know, telephone just becomes a thing of communication, but you can see the fear there.
Sounds like he thought the telephone was going to be the iPod.
Well, that was my point. I think he was looking forward to the iPhone.
Yeah. All right. Again, this one is entitled "The Phonograph," November 7th, 1877, New York Times. There's a good reason to believe that if the phonograph proves to be what its inventors claim that it is, both making and reading will fall into disuse. I mean, why should we print a speech when it can be bottled? And why should we learn to read when, if some skillful elocutionist can subsequently listen to it without taking the slightest trouble? We shall be able to buy Dickens and Thackeray by the single bottle or by the dozen, and rural families can lay in a hogshead of Timothy Titcomb every fall for consumption during the winter. Instead of libraries filled with combustible books, we shall have vast storehouses of bottled authors, and though students in college may be required to learn the use of books, just as they now learn the dead languages, they will not be expected to make any practical use of this study. Blessed be the lot of the small boy of the future. He will never have to learn his letters or to wrestle with the spelling book, and if he does not revere the name of the inventor of the phonograph, he will be utterly destitute of all gratitude.
Wait, who did invent the phonograph? I'm destitute
Yeah.
of all gratitude.
Edison.
Was that Edison?
Edison.
Pretty much.
Oh,
So like 1800s,
No,
who invented that Edison? 1900s to early 2000s, Steve Jobs or Al Gore.
Al Gore.
All right, my quote is from Nick Bolton's book, I Live in the Future, and this is how it works concerning the railway. The railway brought an incredible amount of anxiety across all levels of society. For example, according to one history book, the 19th century beginnings of railway transportation in Great Britain stirred up extraordinary paranoia. It was claimed that trains would blight crops with their smoke and terrify livestock with their noise, that people would asphyxiate if carried at speeds of more than 20 miles per hour, and that hundreds would yearly die beneath locomotive wheels or beneath locomotive wheels or in fires or boiler explosions. Many saw the railway as a threat to the social order, allowing the lower classes to freely travel, weakening moral standards and dissolving the traditional bonds of community.
We can't be letting them lower class people be
Lower.
traveling around.
I have an order of social, please.
The traditional
aren't
bonds
these
of
great
community.
quotes? Aren't they great quotes?
Absolutely.
Whenever something is new, it is so easy to fearmonger and talk about how. I mean, I love this. You go asphyxiate.
None of us can say it.
Asphyxiate at 20 miles an hour. Go faster than that. You're going to start, breathing heavy and.
I heard a pastor who his first position as a senior pastor was in 1990s.
Okay.
The biggest dispute for the church he was at in the 1980s was whether or not to put in indoor plumbing. And it passed. There were 3 men that voted against it, and they still refused to use the indoor bathrooms. they continued to use the outhouses.
very good.
It kind of goes back, Jerry
By
Clower.
out. How far out?
I don't know, not far enough. But Jerry Clower told the story. The church is going to vote to get a chandelier, and everybody's waiting for Uncle Bessie. What's he going to say? And he stood up and like, ain't no need to get a chandelier. We ain't got nobody who can play it. And so so many things where we're just kind of
Southern
Don't
humor.
need a chandelier hanging around here.
That's right.
Are we going to listen to Steven read his?
Steven doesn't have
don't have
one.
one.
We,
Don't
we,
have
we,
one?
we left
Can we
him
give
out.
you one?
Yeah.
I'm just here to listen.
He's
to
window
the guys
dressing.
on the line.
Yeah.
All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, technologies are changing, and digital technologies are changing at such a rapid rate that it's hard for us to wrap our mind around it. I like this book, Nick Bilton's book, I Live in the Future, and This Is How It Works. Now, he's the lead technology writer for the New York Times Bits blog. I recommend the reading of the book. Now, while I say that I recommend it, I'm going to put this disclaimer out. He talks about how the porn industry was a leading edge,
Right. Right.
well, leading
They're
edge
cutting-
in
yeah,
technology
they're- yeah.
because they're trying to stay ahead of the law. Let's
Right.
just be honest here.
Right.
So if something like that would offend you, you don't want to read the book. But I found it fascinating. I got it on audiobook. And so I think that he really encapsulates. There's a one minute out of this book. I want us to listen to this clip because he really is challenging our way of thinking about the future and information delivery.
I wanted to point out that with regard to the new delivery methods and the next generation's consumer habits, the writing was on the wall, or the screen, if you will. I tried to explain that I, like many in my generation, preferred the instantaneous digital experience because I could share my favorite articles with others, adding comments and joining a collective discussion while also viewing other readers' opinions. The print paper is static, and so is its narrative. In comparison, a digital narrative can include invigorating interactive multimedia such as videos and slideshows. I also explained that people in my social networks and those I trusted shared relevant content with me, and their remarks and news gathering had become a critical filter for the stories I consumed. It wasn't about print versus digital. It was about immediacy, details, links, interactive graphics, videos, and most important, hyper-personalization.
So how do you guys react to, his contention is that information delivery has changed, that it's immediate, that it's very personalized. So does it ring true? Some people would disagree with him at this point. I'm just curious what we might think.
I remember when I was 14 or 15, and the big fight was Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks. And this was like the most hyped up fight that I can remember growing up. I got the paper Sunday morning, and my paper, the front page of the sports, did not have who won the fight. I didn't know who won the fight. So I get to church, and my friend's like, man, did you hear Tyson knocked him out in 90 seconds? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, it's in the paper. And it wasn't in my – he had the same paper I did, but he had the headline, Tyson knocks out Spinks. Well, now,
Crazy.
Even if you don't buy it on pay-per-view, I can get on the internet or ESPN as soon as that.
Twitter, dude.
Oh, yeah. You can, and then you can find out immediately, and I don't have to buy the paper the next morning. Extra, read all about it. That doesn't
So
fly
you're saying
anymore.
for you personally that,
Right.
that it has changed?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Steven, I'm really curious. How did you react to that quote?
I instantly remembered the late 80s and being a kid at the Billy Graham Crusade, and remember as a kid being bored out of my mind listening to a message for probably an hour, I would imagine, back then, and realizing that back then an hour-long message, maybe even my dad preaching an hour-long message in church, would have been the norm. And now how it has changed for the church, even the delivery system has to be, nutshell in order for people to stay in tune. And I think it has a lot to do with the way technology has forced us this instant nutshell, chewable bite of information at a time that makes us makes
Well,
us who we are.
and
You lost me there about halfway through. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we're starting in some cases to see some groups come out of that. A lot of churches that I see, particularly the big ones that are on the forefront, have messages that are going an hour and 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic content.
Who would that be?
Huh?
Who would that be right now?
Mars Hill, for example. Mars Hill in Seattle.
Yeah, Driscoll.
But don't they split that up with don't they do a cage match in between?
Yeah. On a typical Sunday.
So they have board meeting in the middle of the sermon.
That's right.
And in
No,
this
but
corner
I
of
think-
the finance
So,
chair.
I mean, okay, the question is, I mean, Stebbins already jumped to where I wanted to go, and that is, what are the implications for the church? So you, Matthew, are disputing this, that it's
Well,
not
and
always
maybe it's
about
because
the
I'm
nutshell delivery.
maybe it's because I'm doing it because I'm finding that I'm preaching for 40 minutes. And I'm trying to defend myself.
You're defending yourself.
And maybe what I need to do is kind of get an idea from people about how that's actually working out for them. But I regret that, and I think that with a hair of maturity, that the idea that now we need to make sure that we're nutshell. How can you do that if you're going to be spiritually mature? You got to take some time
Right.
to do it. It can't happen in a nutshell, and
Right.
that's what I'm afraid of in the whole
Right.
thing.
Now, here's what I take away from this, that I don't think it is about the time compression or the nutshell. I think that what Nick points out is that it is about the content, and that what we're looking for is pure content. So, Heath, you talk about the fight. Now we would go to Twitter, not even to find out details about the fight.
Right.
Who won?
Who won?
Who
That's
won?
right.
And I think for sermon delivery, my point is this, that if it's good content,
Yeah.
the generation under me, sorry about the phone back there, the generation under me, it is about good content.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a movie that runs 2 hours
Yeah.
and it's a good movie,
Yeah.
people will sit there and watch it.
Oh yeah.
And I think the same is true with a sermon. If you preach an hour, but it is good content and you have something to say, I think that people are going to listen to it. But if you got fluff for an hour,
Yeah.
people are going to check out. And so the reason as a young lad there, Steven, the reason you check out at the Billy Graham thing is he's not telling you anything you don't know. It's a very basic gospel. And so, you're just going to check out of that because you get it. You understand it. And so I think that one of the things that technology is forcing us to do is it really forces good content.
Right. I read an article by Seth Godin last week about when you're speaking, if you're preparing a PowerPoint, that you typically speak 10 to 12 sentences per minute, and so that basically you need to be thinking not 5 slides with words, but you want to put images. And so I'm taking the challenge, like this week for my message, I'm going to have like twice as many slides, but they're all going to be images that go. It's not going to be my sermon. They've got my sermon point in the bulletin. They don't need my sermon point on the screen, but it's a picture or an image or something that connects their mind with the point,
Okay.
but that also kind of helps them engage.
You say
know?
yes to that. I hear you amening that.
Yes, I do. Bullet points, a list of a slide full of text is just bad news.
Yeah.
It really is. I had the great privilege of, I guess it's almost 2 years ago now, teaching at our South Carolina's pastors gathering, just how to put together an appropriate presentation for Sunday morning, and an image that speaks what you're trying to say, and it's something that you have to learn to think about. You have to learn to say, okay, how do I find, and what is an image that says something, but without using text, something that speaks to what you're trying to get across is a huge benefit.
So one of the things he talks about in this quote here, he packs a lot in this 1 minute quote, and
Right.
one is multi-sensory.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so, does the information gathering process for our people need to be multi-sensory? If it does, what's the implication for the church here?
We got some work to do.
Well, let's go back. For us, for gathering information, does it need to be multi-sensory? Is that part of what draws us into technology. I mean, all of us here have an interest. I mean, even Steve, I would say that for your generation, Steve, you're probably an anomaly in terms of the tech that you use.
Well, I don't know what you just called me, but I challenge you to pistols at 12 o'clock. Yeah, well, some are really, you get a mix. People that are not reactionary against the change, for whom the change does not represent a threat, in other words, are generally pretty open about it. Some of them will actually use it. Others of them are just curious about it. But I think a lot of folk are threatened by it. I think I feel threatened by the fact that everything we're doing online is being recorded somewhere. Whoever had that about them in previous generations? Every whisper, every thought that you commit to Facebook or Twitter
it's
or
out
any
there.
of the rest of it is going to be saved. And I don't know who can stand up to that, given the atmosphere in which we live, where people will seize upon small things
And make them large.
and say, well, see here, he said this about that subject or the other.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult when you really think about what's happening out there. And the truth of the matter is, we have outdated privacy laws. We are probably the most exposed generation. Either the generation coming after us is going to reclaim their privacy rights and have strong protections, or
Laws that are not appropriate for the technology.
that's right.
Yeah. So let's go back to this multisensory thing. So, I mean, are we multisensory? Is that what we like about information gathering?
It's work to be multisensory, especially when you're a one-man band.
Right.
In a way,
Yeah.
it's really a lot of work. But boy, it does benefit. Something that I'm dying to do is to figure out how to do like staging design,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
things that are
Sure.
like I've had this idea about what if when I do series, like right now I'm in this series with Esther, and I put a lot of work into creating imagery for that. What if I printed like movie theater size posters,
Yeah.
and hung them up like in the youth room and
Yeah.
in the adult Sunday school room and stuff like that, like now showing kind of not with those
Right.
those words necessarily, but all that kind of stuff. But boy, it is work, and it is time, and it is finances to make it happen. It really is.
One of the things that we've got to remember with preaching is we are giving out information, but for the purpose of transformation. And one of the things Seth Godin said in this article is, whatever you're sharing, if you don't elicit an emotional response, then you really haven't hit the target. And I'm not talking about people are all crying, but you have got to stir, when you're sharing the Word of God, you have got to share it in a way that stirs up something within people that helps them realize, man, I need to surrender my life to Christ, or man, there's this thing that I have not given, and when you connect with their emotions, and you can do that in the multi-sensory way, I don't think you can do that like TG said with just bullet points. It's got to be engaging.
I think it's worthwhile to remember, and I was just reading some of Eric Schnabel's 2-volume work on the spread of the early church and the gospel yesterday, and he makes a specific point, spending pages dealing with it, that the arts and technology, and he's not against that at all, that's not even the focus of his book, but the arts and technology, the gizmos, were in the hands of the pagans in those days. They had the best show, they had the most sensual and most appealing performances. Paul only had his voice, and he didn't believe, and according, if we're to believe what 1 Corinthians says, he writes in that letter, he says, you say that my bodily presence is meek and contemptible in the King James Version, which is not exactly the endorsement you want from a congregation. But he said, my message did not come with the excellency of human speech, but in the power of the Holy Spirit. He believed that there was something embedded in the very words he communicated. Now, this is not against the arts,
Right.
but this is to say that it's the message
Right.
we preach. He said that he was not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it's the power. That message is the power of God, that good news. And so if that's what we're using the arts to communicate, that's good. I think
Right.
some churches that I've seen are communicating, we've got a great arts program
Right.
in
Right.
this church, a great arts department.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, Jesus is the hero. Everything we put out.
Judd Wilhite from Central Christian Church in Las Vegas. They're in Las Vegas, and so they're competing with the shows.
Oh, my
and
word.
they
Multi-sensory,
had
everything.
one of the best, Sunday morning as far as the arts. They did so many different things, but he said he had Vegas people come to him like, man, we come to, like performers in Vegas said, man, we come to your church because you got the best show, and he like stopped. It like took him aback because he was like, man, we're losing something if people are coming for the show and they're not getting the point. And so they kind of toned it down. And I absolutely agree with you, Steve. It can never become about the method.
One of the churches in South Lake County where I pastored in the Church of the Nazarene, about 5 or 6 years after I left, it was Contemporary Church, Southern Baptist, and orientation, and they pumped this particular service. They said, on this Sunday morning, you got to be here. This is a got-to-be-here service. You
Right.
won't believe what. And when everybody came in, the fancy lighting was gone. There was a single bare spotlight on an old bar stool with tape on the top. The band was not there.
Right.
And it was just as plain could be.
Wow.
And the whole service was, he says, we've got a great band. And he talked about how excellent. We've got a great art department. We've got, but he said, let me tell you something. You have to ask yourself whether you're coming here for those things or if this is all we had, but we had the message of Jesus Christ. Would that be enough?
Wow.
Well, he gave them a great experience that Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
he
did.
that's the truth.
He did.
An
That's my
emotional,
point.
like, whoa, my word. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You're talking about emotion,
Yeah.
emotive.
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
tapped into it.
Absolutely.
But that's the point. It wasn't in the gizmos and the gadgets
Right,
and the
sure.
setup. It was in Christ.
Sure.
And that was the point he was bringing home. He wasn't selling his church as the most cutting edge at that time.
Well, I think Matthew raises a great question. So if you're running a one-man show, I'll use his words. I mean, it is a challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
This whole multi-sensory.
I've talked about this before, but one of the biggest delights of my life was to be at Ebenezer's Coffee House in Washington, D.C., and to get to accompany one of the pastors there. That is the home base for National Community Church, to get to accompany him up into the church offices and to walk through the office that was the pastors of media and technology. And they're sitting there working on the next series, like getting the
Branding and
everything together
Yeah.
to make that happen. And I thought, oh, how wonderful. And they were, we talked about this. They were called ministers in what they were doing, and it's a part of it today.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. There's this misconception today that to reach the current generation, that worship has to be a certain way, has to be dark, and you have to have flashing lights, and it's got to be a certain way. Well, here's the thing. When Oakway, when my church put in their stained glass windows, that was cutting edge.
Mm-hmm.
That was cutting edge at the time. And so what I find myself trying to do in my context is, how do you marry those two? How do you marry traditional values
Tradition,
with contemporary methods? And how do you have, my vision and my goal is to have one of the most engaging, biblical, relevant services in a traditional setting. Because I don't believe that. I think it's a lie that, well, people don't want to go to a traditional church building. And I'm like, people need hope.
Yeah.
People need love, and they'll go anywhere to find
I
of the
wish my
things-
daughter Victoria were here, because she and her husband Michael are in South Korea in the military, and for around Easter time they went to Dr. Cho's church, the largest church in the world.
Yeah.
Or at least it has been. I understand from last night maybe the largest church is now in Nigeria, 250,000 on
Yeah.
Easter. But at any rate, they went there, and beautiful church. They said it's clean, neat.
Yes.
But it is not what you would think with the technology. It's just church. And the technology that's there is fairly transparent so that it doesn't obstruct the view of what's being presented.
And that's the most technically advanced
Culture.
country,
Mhm.
in the world. You were going to say?
I don't remember. Oh yeah, I was going back to Heath's point on the traditional thing. One thing that my dad was at a church that had stained glass windows, and the thing is they weren't just colors, that actually had imagery within the windows.
Oh, that's
I tried to
powerful.
get him to do a series,
Right.
to go through the church and do a series on the stained glass windows and each one of the stories, and just work your way through the sanctuary, focusing on one each week. I thought, man, how cool that would be, and I wanted stained glass windows with stories on it so we could do that. But
We know we have one of our stained glass windows is the manger with the Cairo over it, that looks like a P
Yeah,
and an X.
yeah.
And so last year our Christmas series was X marks the spot, and we were going through things about Christmas. And people are always like, you can't use Xmas. That takes the Christ out of Christmas. And I said, we got the X right there in our stained glass window.
They
like,
see, they don't
that's-
understand.
And so it was educational. But, man, I used the stained glass window as the illustration of
And a rock
X
came
marks the
through it next
spot.
to-
No. There
Okay,
was no rock.
here's the one thing. Go ahead, Stephen.
I think we're spending a lot of time on the idea and question marks of technology in our 1 hour service, or our 1 hour presentation of the gospel once a week. When I think the overarching theme needs to be how can, or the question should revolve around the question of how are we utilizing technology beyond that.
Good.
TJ brings up the point about being the one man show. When I got here a year and a half ago, I mean I still am the only pastor here. There's no one answering phones, so the phone is off the hook. Don't tell anybody. But when I got here, I really wanted. I thought I'm going to go all out technology wise, and this congregation of 50 people, they're going to learn what Facebook is, and they're going to learn that our church has a Facebook and a Twitter account, and I'm going to advertise these on announcements. And I found myself slowly losing those bits. I don't do sermon slides every week. I don't do. Some of it's because of the one-man show idea, and some of it is because I found that I want to utilize the technology through the week, and not just waste all my time and energy on the Sunday morning. So my conversations on Facebook are happening, and my tweets about the church on Sunday afternoon are happening, and it's not just throwing all my technology emphasis into that 1 hour.
That 1
You're
hour.
right.
Good point.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, very good. Well, one part of the comment here by Nick Bilton that concerns me a little bit is he says that today it is about a hyper-personalized experience. Well, here's my question, guys. I mean, doesn't that kind of speak against the gospel or against the word, in that there's such a high emphasis on community? And what you see Jesus doing, modeling, is servanthood. It is sacrifice for the sake of the community. It is not about the personalized experience. So, I mean, I kind of want us to react to that statement there.
Well, I think it's both. I don't think you'll ever get away from what must I do to be saved, as well as our Father, which art in heaven. I think both are valid aspects of this. There's a part and a point at which it's all very personal, and there's a part at which you cannot afford to forsake the assembling of yourselves together. You've got to acknowledge that you're part of the body of Christ on the earth. But the use of technology, as Stephen has identified, for the purposes of fostering a more holistic expression of the gospel and communication of the gospel is probably, I mean, that's going to touch the individual sometimes, and sometimes it's going to touch the whole worship service, and sometimes it's going to go beyond that to the community.
Yeah, I guess my point is this, that if Nick is right, that what people are looking for is a hyper-personalized experience, what then is the implication for the church?
Well, I think, one of the soul shifts that in David Drury's and Steve Dinette's book is the shift from individualism to community.
Yeah, no
And
question.
so I think the church has to be very aware that we live in a society where people will go to a crowded mall, wearing headphones. and they will not engage. We live in a society where you can go through a day, you can go to the bank, you can get food, you can go to the grocery store, and never interact with another human being. So in our efforts to reach people, you cannot, the essence of the church is that connection between the people. And so you can never lose that. You can't, I mean, I don't think a church should be like a buffet and you offer everything to everyone. It's got to be pass this plate and share.
But isn't the challenge this, that we have got to find a way to give people a hyper-personalized experience to even begin to address the issue of, hey, guess what? It's not about you. It is from me to we. I mean, to use the social language.
Right.
I mean, am I wrong here? I mean, isn't that the challenge that's before us? How do we reach out to the individualized experience to get them to a point to where they understand, you know, this really isn't about you. This is about something bigger than you. It's about community. I mean, you talk about the earphones. You can go all day long. You go to the mall, and you raise a great point. So I can go to the mall, be around hundreds of people, and be very alone.
Yeah. And that, in a sense, is also a wonderful opportunity for the church. Is we live in a society where so many people are retreating into themselves.
Okay, opportunity. You know? How do we cash in on that opportunity? What does that look like?
I was told there would not be a test on all of this.
Well, that question is for all of us here. I mean, if Nick is right, now what you could dispute is that Nick is wrong. It's not about a hyper-personalized experience.
Right.
Well, millennials, I mean, one of the things I have my staff do is pick up the free paper called The Link for Greenville area. And when I was pastoring in the Church of the Nazarene, we used to pay about $12,000 a year to get the kind of information and have your finger on the pulse twice a year of our demographic focus that we now get weekly for free by picking that magazine. You know what their music is, you know what their issues are, there's an advice column, and there are articles parsing their culture. One of the articles last week was about millennials and their love of what you were just identifying, self-expression. If they can't express themselves in something personally, express their own like and desire, they're not going to be a part of it. So there has to be a way of drawing that out of them and accommodating that. But I think what we have is just the nuance may shift, the emphasis may shift a little bit. You're never going to get away from the corporate features, and you can never forsake the individualistic aspects of the gospel as well. But our bishop said that inductive preaching, that is experience to reason rather reason to experience, for moderns, preaching inductively feels like preaching backwards, but it flows just right for postmoderns. And he's quoting Ham there. So I think, you know, in the way they process thought, that's probably a very helpful statement.
All right. Well, I mean, I just wanted us to be thinking. I mean, we haven't resolved anything here, but I think that, you know, one article we're not going to be able to cover. I just want to blow through this really quick, but I do think it's interesting. 4 myths about using technology in the church. Again, these are myths. All right. So here we go. If you build it, they will come. Holy shoddy is still shoddy, Matthew.
Amen.
It doesn't cost anything. Well, it does cost something. Only the younger generation uses social networking. Steve is example that's not true.
No, by no means. I will die, world's oldest living child, and you've just abused him.
And technology could replace real-life relationships. So, again, those are myths, and we'll link you up with that. It really is. I'm sorry that we don't have the time. It really is a wonderful article and worth you checking out. All right, let's move along here, and after Matthew gets off the tablet there,
I'm ready to roll. What are
we're
we
going to go to Download of the Week.
Download of the Week. Well, here we go.
Download of the Week.
Our Download of the Week is Copy Trans, brought to you by Steve Stanley.
Yes. Children, are you interested in transferring your own audio files to your iPhone, iPod, and other
for.
Yes.
Pardon?
Audio files that are paid for and not stolen.
Yeah, we're not advocating ripping off.
Well, perhaps they would like to get the MP3 of this show and transfer it.
There you go.
There's now a way to do that free of charge. if you have an incriminating sound clip from your last LBA, you can also transfer that. And this is a suite of tools which you would pay a lot of money if you got the whole suite, and I don't know how useful they all would be, but I have it for the very single purpose of copying MP3s to my iPhone so that I can listen to them later. And that one feature is free and unlimited. Now, you'll get a limited amount of use out of the others. They give you a trial period and so many pictures that you can copy from and to. But I think what you'll most appreciate is the Copy Trans Manager, and that's the part that's free. Unfortunately, if you've upgraded your iPhone to iOS 5, it is not yet working. What I'll recommend in its place is Ubuntu 11.10, which I use to completely control my iPhone.
Yeah, Steve plugs in his iPhone to Ubuntu because it will sync with Ubuntu. How crazy is that?
That doesn't sound natural or godly.
You have traded the natural
You'll
for
start
the unnatural
asphyxiating
there.
on that.
Mr. Chairman,
All right,
regular order.
let's move on to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or
HGH.
Took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I am not a crook. If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
He gave God no glory and taught sin. Rachel Hockenberger, spokesperson for the Westboro Baptist Church, explaining why the congregation protested the funeral of Steve Jobs. Details about the protest were given by the church to the public through a Twitter app on an iPhone. Source, The Washington Post.
When Bible study can be done on Facebook as easily as in the church basement, and a favorite preacher can teach lessons via podcast, the necessity of physically gathering each week in the same place with the same people turns remote. Without a doubt, this represents a new crisis for organized religion, a challenge to think again about what it means to be a body of believers. Lisa Miller expressing her concerns in her article, My Take, How Technology Could Bring Down the Church. Source, CNN's Belief blog.
The blind leading the blind. This occurs when no one has thought through the reason for a website. There's a clear lack of clarity of vision and purpose. Sadly, we've seen several churches hand off the website design process to people who do not have the experience to navigate the complexity and buy-in to lead the vision to succeed. The end result is noise and clutter and unclear direction for the website. Drew Goodmanson explaining one of 6 ways churches fail with their websites. Source, goodmanson.com.
Should Christians use online dating services? Yes, and with gusto. Online dating doesn't correct the well-documented imbalance of devout Christian women, abundant supply, to like-hearted men, a paucity, but it at least widens the net for Christians seeking partners. Messiah College anthropologist Janelle Williams Paris responding to the question, is online dating for Christians? Source, Christianity Today. So Heath had the quote of the week, man. This is so good. For those of you that may not know who Westboro Baptist Church is, this is the church that goes
You're lucky.
around.
No, consider yourselves lucky.
Red
Plug your
belts.
ears, put cotton in them,
they're
and just
coming to
continue
Golden
walk
Grove
away for about 5 minutes.
For
No,
a spring campaign.
no.
They-
Just
they-
walk away for about 5 minutes because your life will be better to not.
They
know.
go to they protest funerals. The military
Military
people come
funerals.
around.
They're just whacked. That's
They
all.
are.
And
They're-
I doubt that they have sincerely held religious beliefs. That's my personal belief about
Well,
their beliefs.
the church is essentially just the pastor's family.
But they have one spiritual gift, and that's to find a camera wherever it's turned
Yes.
on.
Yes.
That's right.
And a microphone.
And the camera people will show up. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
crazy thing.
And this, if I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Hockenberger is actually a lawyer. Like, went to law school.
Really?
Because they knew a lot of the legal ramifications that they were going to face. In other weird church news, this Friday, Harold Camping, second chance at the rapture taking place.
Okay.
So just put that.
Well, thank
we
you.
may not be
Greg,
here next week.
Heath is on that. But getting back to this Westboro thing, and so they go to protest Jobs' funeral,
Yeah.
And they get
And
the message.
they send the message out. Yeah, I love this. They alert everybody. Okay, we're going to protest. Everybody show up, and they do it over a Twitter feed from Twitter for iPhone.
But where did they?
That's beautiful.
He had a private funeral, so where did they go to protest?
I have no idea.
Oh, right outside wherever it was. There and
But I don't know that was public knowledge.
Goofball stuff, man.
yeah,
They just walked around,
aimlessly.
Yeah, Cupertino somewhere, just
Yeah.
wandered. Did you notice? I don't know if you guys, any of you picked up on this, but the quote that Steve read, compare that with the article in 1876 about
Yeah.
the telephone.
Yeah, very. Yes.
Look, I mean, here we are, 130 some years, 140 years later. Yeah, now you're shaking your head. You don't think that there's a parallel here?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure,
Okay.
Well, a lot of churches are doing online. New Spring Church in Anderson, South Carolina, started an online campus, and at some point stopped it because it wasn't fulfilling the purpose of the church. They're like, wait, this isn't really connecting people in a way that we want it to.
Yeah.
And so they stopped they still stream their services, but they don't have, what's the word? Not a mediator. A moderator in there for
Mediator.
discussion.
And that's Connor. The bind leading the blind. I thought this was a great blog here.
Yes.
6 ways churches fail with their websites.
It should have come up in our previous discussion.
Yeah. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Matthew, you and Steven and myself, all of our church websites are run on WordPress, correct?
Yes.
No, mine's a Joomla.
All right,
actually.
forget you then. But is that like blog software, or I don't know anything about that?
Yeah,
software.
it's a CMS. It's an open source CMS.
Right.
Like WordPress. Mhm.
Well, I mean, this kind of, I know Tony Morgan did a series on this about, how churches can use WordPress. Clover Sites is a great program, great people, but if you don't have the $1,000 startup fee, and they do great websites, but what I've noticed a lot of times is within 2 seconds, if you know Clover Sites,
Oh yeah, they're immediately visible. They're all
Right.
they look nice, but then once you've seen one,
You've seen
them
them
all.
all.
Right. So South Carolina district website is also WordPress, and
Right.
it is a very beautiful theme from
Yes.
Theme Forest that's up that runs it, and so it gives it that beautiful landing page.
Right.
That then there is the blogging component of it, but
May I just say,
Yes.
since you are the webmaster of that,
oh boy,
you do a fantastic job.
Very good.
well, thank
If
you.
I had a tenth of your skills, my church would have one, but I refuse to put up one that looks like it came from front page 2000.
Someone pat Steve on the back, because there's a lot of pastors who would just do that.
Yeah.
Create the website in Word and save
But-
it as an
Well, everybody
HTML
keep-
and put it up there.
But let me tell
Everybody
you this.
keeps saying you got to do it, but I can't sell it yet to the board. So
Sure.
I'm not going to put up one that's a bad. One of the things I learned years ago from Peter Wagner in the church growth thing was your signage. He said it is actually worse to put up a cheap sign, a poor sign, than to have no sign at all.
Yeah.
I do commend Steve, so I'm not arguing against Steve. Here's the sad thing. On our district website, the number one reason people go to the district website is to click through to find out something about a
That's
local
right.
church.
Yeah.
And do you know the number one
reason?
The number one church that they're looking for information for is
Greenville
First Wesleyan
So
Church.
what we need is a district web creator.
No, listen. I mean, you say that and you laugh, but
Well, I've got a
given-
page up there. It's
Right, and people are going to that. I mean, they're hitting that.
I've got a page on there that has basic information, but I don't have anything that.
Yeah. I mean, and I was shocked. I was blown away. Why are you winking at me, Heath?
No, sorry, I got the wrong contact. Dan. Sorry.
He likes you.
I mean, I'm getting
discussed
weirded
that
out over here. I just look over and he just keeps winking at me.
Sorry.
He's having a stroke. I think.
Yeah, but I was shocked to find out that the number one reason people come to our website, the district website, is to click through to a local church. I talked to one local pastor who said, I mean, he resigned his church 3 or 4 years ago, but he said, we had this crummy website. He said they've taken it down because no one's there to keep up with it. He said, but they came through the district, found our website. And he said we gained that family.
Wow.
They'd moved to the area and they were looking for a Wesleyan
And I have
church.
been trying my hardest to get all the churches in our district to realize you've got to give me something to get up here.
Yeah.
And I think we were about up to 2/3.
Well-
and everybody else is just kind of dragging their feet. And you don't realize there are people looking. There are people looking for you.
Well, and this goes back to Nick Bilton's book, I Live in the Future, and This Is How It Works. This idea that I want instantaneous information. How am I going to get that right now? I'm not going to go to the telephone book. I'm not going to call someone. I'm going to go to the internet. Wesleyan Church, South Carolina. Okay, now I want to see, do they have something in Liberty, South Carolina?
Right.
And,
Yes.
And if so, what is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's
the home of
do
the
you
Westboro
think-
Baptist group.
Do you guys think that those that are dragging their feet in promoting or putting some emphasis into an online website are those same guys that as soon as the Yellow Pages opportunity comes across the mail, they stamp "do it" and they think, all right, this is my in. Are they still holding on to old technology, or are they?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, Steven, and I don't know this for sure. My opinion is that there are probably good reasons why they don't have a website. In other words, a person that would seek to find a church through the internet would probably at the end of the day be disappointed with that particular church that doesn't even try to solicit you through the internet. I don't know. They may be using, I mean, some would probably use old technology like Yellow Pages. I think you're right, and feel like that they've done their thing. But I also think probably the other 50%, it is, well, it's just pure neglect.
We've offered people with what we've done on our district options. Basically, if you've got your own website that your church is doing, and I mean, I'm gonna probably get in trouble for saying this. Not all of them should be doing their own website, because it is that sort of exporting from Microsoft Word and HTML and throwing it up on the web. Anyways, we can link right to it, or we will give our churches a spot where they can list all their information, and I can make it look good too. But I don't know, it's like pulling teeth for some.
If you're listening to this podcast, we're going to have the link for goodmanson.com, his blog, and he's got these 6 ways churches fail with their websites. And if you read through all 6 of these, they are excellent. They are excellent.
Right. Do you think that we fail? I mean, one thing we don't have on our church website yet is sermon audio, sermon video. And I feel like that's something people are looking for. They want to know, well, man, if this guy can keep my attention in a video, we want to go hear him. And
I would say this, though, and I'm curious what you guys think. I think that it's more important that you have the audio up, not the video. And the only reason I say that is because for me, I get a lot of my stuff through podcasts that I download, and I listen to it while I'm
if you're having to choose between one or the other, definitely choose that. Again, here I'm going to be, I might get myself in trouble, but we do video. I wish we did audio more, because we have a former pastor in the church, and they sit right in the right spot where they fall in line in the video camera. He's an elderly guy.
Tony Casey.
No. No. And I mean, it's just because of medical conditions and things like that, he cannot stay awake. And so in the video shot for Golden Grove every week is me preaching to a guy who's fallen asleep week after week after week. And there's nothing, I mean,
I've never seen that. I guess I was asleep.
Well, if you go look at the video, there it is.
When you edit this podcast to put it on YouTube, you should put a little window of a clip of you preaching with him.
That's right. That's a good point. A kind of a PayPal number there too that people could send so that you could get different angles. Cameras with more than.
Well, I do wish. I mean, I do understand too why we can do video. I wish that we had a bit more emphasis on audio for what we're doing, just because sometimes there's distractions like that, and if you don't have a good multi-camera setup there where you can especially for moving, because I've got the one guy up there doing it. If I move around, I'm out of the camera shot, and it's just a shot of everything else.
Why can't you come up and put a little logo right below him? Our intercessory prayer warrior.
Arrow
Yeah.
piercing heaven.
Yeah, and every time he drops his head, it's like a blinking light. Prayer
Prayer
warrior
alert.
at work.
Prayer alert.
Yeah, prayer alert. Oh, that's beautiful.
Well, and the only reason I
Prayer
ever thought of
alert.
it is because somebody mentioned it to me. They're
And-
like, "Hey, I watched it. What's up with the guy that's always asleep?"
and listen, and this guy is a jewel.
He is.
yeah.
So I'm
He
not trying to
is.
say anything about it. And he can't
He is.
help it. He is sacrificially being there.
That's
but
right.
it is a video for somebody that doesn't know. It looks
Yeah.
like, oh my word, what is
Yeah.
he? He's putting everybody to sleep. He's got one guy in his congregation, and that guy is asleep.
If you go to the Goodmanson blog and just read the 6 things people do wrong, he's got just some practical stuff here. He's got a before and after picture of a website that was redesigned.
Yeah, that was
and in one of it, he just talks about how you just overwhelm people with all these clicks and choices. He
Yeah.
shows you what a slimmed down version looks like. I would highly recommend that you go to scwesleyan.org, what Matthew's done. It's
Yeah.
sleek.
Yeah.
You don't get overwhelmed by it.
Hey, can I make an observation about a certain denomination we all know and love? I went yesterday because somebody had written me about wanting history of our denomination.
Yes.
And that I can't find that feature anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to find.
I looked around.
It's-
Wikipedia.
All right.
Right.
Well, this is what
Let me
I've
give
got
one more
right
offer.
now under construction. That's been like the last 2 days. Maybe
Please,
now.
let me
I
give
bet
a
I
little
missed it.
a little tip
Oh,
to
here we go.
somebody here, okay?
All right.
If you've never built a website before, you don't know what you're doing. If you're used to Facebook, build a Facebook fan page. Use that as your church website.
Oh.
I'm telling you, you can have more interaction there with your people
Good word, man.
than anything else. If you're already used to Facebook, take the next step, build that out. And I would love to see even churches that say, well, we just don't know what to do with that. Steve, I'm talking to you right here, man. We don't know how to build it. You know how to be on Facebook.
Yeah, but-
Set up a Facebook fan page, let people get in there and hold discussion and utilize that. It's a fantastic way of doing it. And then a place like the district website, when you click on Greenville First, it can go directly to that spot.
That sounds
Because with
easier.
Facebook's customs URL, you can go to facebook.com/Greenville First Wesleyan, and it would be
Yeah, we've got one. And just let me tell you that I don't get notified. I don't know how to do it. I've had it, and then they change it again. You have to stay on top of it to get notified when someone posts there and they're asking a question. And sometimes it's been 3 months.
the other beauty of doing it there is you can set up a team of people that you trust. You can make them the moderators,
me.
basically. So
don't
at
even
Golden
trust me.
Grove, there's about 3 or 4 people that can post status updates to the church website, which keeps it from me having to do it all the time. So recently there was a youth event. Our youth leaders, after the event was over, put up a post saying, hey, thanks to everybody that came out to support the youth event. I didn't have to do that, and it's just great. They can put anybody in the church can put pictures and
It's a
tag
good
it there
idea.
and keep it as a living place, and then you've got a team of people doing it. So I would highly recommend that if you don't know what you're doing, to start in that spot. I mean,
All right,
knows that.
real quick, let's zoom to our last story. Steve, as always, he brings us the best stuff, man. So, in this day and age, economy's down. I mean, people are turning to a life of crime, and this is what's happening. And they're stealing things. And how many times have you been in a church parking lot, any parking lot, and someone kind of whispers, "Hey, bud, come here," and then they say to you, "Can you score me a bridge?"
That's right. All the time.
oh, I
All
heard
the
about
time
this.
that
Yes.
Yeah. And so two people charged with stealing a bridge in Lawrence County.
And for a while, they didn't know who it was.
And this-
for a while, they just noticed the bridge was gone. They didn't know.
I'm glad they
Where it went.
noticed. the
Well,
bridge
isn't
was
this
gone.
in the state that one of our guests on the show is from?
I believe it is.
Isn't that right? I mean, isn't this in Pennsylvania, Steven?
Is it Pennsylvania? I don't know.
Yes, I believe.
I read the article late last night.
Newcastle is.
You know,
Sure
there's
enough,
folk from
Pittsburgh.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and so I guess bridge stealing's a big thing there in Pennsylvania, Steven.
Yeah, it's something that we do on the weekends when we're not hunting.
Well, cow tipping only lasts so long.
Yeah. No, the real reason they stole it apparently is because it was haunted and they wanted a beautifully dressed woman in their backyard. Did you read that last paragraph?
Yeah.
Well, is that what they said?
Yeah, well, no, some
No,
people
but it
believe
is.
that it was
Oh.
haunted.
Well, I was going to say
the bridge was-
The
That's all
real
the
reason
more
it was stolen was to sell
not
it for
to
scrap
steal a
metal.
bridge.
Yeah, that's right. You're gonna sell it for scrap metal.
Yep.
So, and then what do you say to when you go turn the bridge in? I just found it. I'm just, we
Just
were
fell
out-
off a truck.
It fell off the truck. I picked it up on the side of the road. It was someone else's garbage.
So
you take it back and say,
How
I've
big?
looked at life from both sides.
Yeah, how
now
big
I don't
must
need
it
it
have been?
anymore.
I don't understand.
I mean,
There's a
that's
lot
not
missing
like
from the article.
that's not like a 15
That's an
minute
anachronistic.
job. I mean, I have
Oh, you
I
know
can-
what? What? A confession? No confession.
I have borrowed road signs before, and that's a tricky deal. You know, I mean, I don't know how you steal a bridge.
Oh, listen, let me tell you. I'll come clean right now. I was pastoring in Wyoming. We had an Assembly of God evangelist, and he would always inflate his numbers horrendously, and everybody knew it. So he went to this little church that probably had 50 people, and he was talking about how the place was packed out every night, you know, and we went to the dump. And there at the dump, it struck us when we were making this delivery, this sign that said, please crowd to the back. They wanted you to get as far back as you could and then unload so that, you know, they wouldn't have to keep. We stole that sign and put it right out front of the church. Borrowed that sign, as I said, and put it outside. We kind of said like Jesus with the donkey, the Lord hath need of thee. And he got up the next Sunday. He was on the radio. He got up the next Sunday and talked about how the devil tried to get him down. Said he'd come out here and sent his crowd and put up that sign.
Oh!
Discouraged me for a minute.
Hey, I think the new version of this, and it's something that I've never done, but I've always, every time I see one, it's a temptation. It's the road signs that like display messages that are portable. You can there are instructions online on how to hack into one of those and put your own custom messages
People
up
do
there on
that,
the sign.
Zombies
Oh
are
man,
coming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had that.
It's a federal offense because I mean I was looking into it for someone else.
Yeah.
Wait, what kind of
This
sign?
is why he has no time for
those
those overhead
they're like on a trailer.
PowerPoints.
They're the big thing with like the 3 lines that display text. So like you can do zombie apocalypse ahead and just different things like that.
It's just
Hey, real quick
horrific.
here. One of the friends of the show, it's been a guest on here before, and is usually in the chat room when she's home. Marcy Burke. She was at Lambeau Field this past Sunday, and so
wow.
go to her Facebook account. She's got some great pictures there. If Marcy's not your friend, just Marcy Burke, friend her, and
But you're not saying this because you love Marcy Burke.
yeah. Now listen, there's one picture where it shows Marcy and her daughter Fawn and the stadium, a beautiful picture of the stadium in the background. And so I commented on the picture. I said, "Gorgeous picture." Oh, by the way, Marcy, you and Fawn look good as well.
Nice.
But they had a great weekend up there, and she's got some great pictures. All right. Hey, Steven, thanks so much, man, for hanging with
guys.
us this week. Next week, we're going to have Ken Schaefer. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about technology in the church this week is I think that Kent Schaefer is just going to be an extension of that and really going to bring a lot of good information for us, and really excited about him being our guest. November the 9th, we have Donna Witten. She's the Director of Communications at 12 Stone Church. She's also the author of a children's book, A Pocket Full of Questions. 12 Stone actually did a 2-week sermon series on that. It's going to be fun talking with her about that whole experience. November 16th, Bob Weitzel will be with us. On November the 11th, his book Organics comes out. We are his first interview about that book. December the 7th, Joanne Lyon's going to be with us. Always just a real treat to have her along, and she'll just kind of give us an update on the state of the church and the world. I mean, she's just, she's always...
She just met with President Obama earlier this week.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow, I had no idea.
But she's not the one who stole his teleprompter. They caught those gentlemen.
Okay, well, if she...
Did they? They really did catch him?
Yeah, they had a well, I mean, what do you do with a government truck that has $200,000 worth of
Presidential equipment.
Presidential equipment.
Well,
I mean,
you load your
take-
bridge. You load your bridge and get out of town, man. That's what you do.
I mean, but you go to the pawn shop and like, this teleprompter has
They
the
were done with
presidential
it.
seal on it.
The Lord hath need of it, right?
I'm gonna start using a teleprompter on Sundays.
January the 4th, Mark Batterson is going to be with us, and that's going to be on the heels of a new release for him, right?
Yes, the Circle Maker.
Okay. Yeah. All righty.
Well, that's it, everybody.
That's it. Steven, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
StevenSheets.com. STEVAN. Sheets, like paper.
All right. And Brother Heath.
They can find me at heathmullican.com, getting ready to post a series of articles on capturing God's vision for your church. So it should be pretty good. I hope it's pretty good.
All right. Brother Stanley.
Boy, I wish I had something fancy like that to put out, but all I have is Steve Stanley at facebook.com.
All right, Tej.
All right. You can find me at matthewtg.com.
Facebook.com/AKC64. If you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail by calling us at 3049-TEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. We may even play your comments on the air. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Adios.
Sayonara.
Sayonara.
Oh, 2 sayonaras. You can't do that. What? Oh, no. We're jinxed.
Auf Wiedersehen!
Oh, thanks.